Hey guys, let's go ahead and jump right into force and motion. So a force is a push or a pull. It's basically anything that can put matter in motion. And we are going to use a spring scale to measure force, and the unit that we use is newtons. You might have noticed that at the very beginning of this video, I had a picture of Isaac Newton sitting under the apple tree, right? Because that supposedly the apple came and hit him on the head, and that's when he came up with how gravity works and figured everything out about gravity. So they named the unit for force after Isaac Newton. So that's like, let's say we're trying to move a box across a room. We can actually measure how many newtons of force it takes to move that box with a spring scale. We always have to keep in mind that friction is going to be working against us. It's the force caused by the rubbing of two surfaces against each other. You probably have rubbed your hands together, right, and it gets hot. That's friction. Or if you think of like sliding in your socks across a classroom floor, it's, because there's less friction, you slide a little easier, but if you were to try to do it on carpet, there would be more friction. And so friction kind of makes it harder for us to move things. It resists movement. When we're talking about space travel, NASA has to think about friction with all of the, air molecules rubbing up against the space shuttle as it's re-entering Earth's atmosphere. That causes a lot of heat, so they put these special heat-resistant tiles on the bottom of the space shuttle. When you're lighting a match, that's friction. And so friction is really, really important to motion. So we have two types of forces, or basically two things that forces can do. They can act on something. It could be balanced forces or it could be unbalanced forces. When we have two equal forces acting on an object in opposite directions, the object is not going to move, and we call that balanced forces. Basically, anytime that something is not going to change, we say that balanced forces are acting on it. Even if something is moving, like let's say we have a toy car that's rolling down the hallway, that's still balanced forces because it's just going straight. Nothing's happening to it, nothing's changing anything. But then if you were to come and push it so that it turns sideways, now we have unbalanced forces acting on it. So we're talking about unequal forces that are going to cause the object to move, like it wasn't moving and now it's moving, or it's changing directions. It's moving in a different way. And the way that we represent forces are going to usually be by arrows, or they could be more specific and actually include numbers there and say, how many newtons of force are acting on a certain object. When we have these numbers on an object, and we can say, oh well, there's 25 newtons of force acting on it, and we calculate what the total force acting on an object is. That's called net force. Net is anytime you total something, so it's the overall force forces that are acting on an object, and it's always going to be in newtons, right, because forces are in newtons. Now, when we have to try to figure out net force, we have to look at the forces and we have to determine if they are working together or are they working against each other. If the forces are working together, we add them. If they're working against each other, like in the right-hand picture where they're playing tug of war, then we have to subtract the forces. So we're going to do some practice with this. So here is one of the foldables that you're putting into your journal, and we have to, again, like I said, we have to figure out if they're working together or against each other. So at the very top, we have 25 newtons and 25 newtons. And since these two are working together, we add them. So we do 25 plus 25 is 50 newtons. I have to put my n there. And then you can write down like the word right, that the boxes can move to the right, or you could just draw an arrow showing that it's going to move in that direction. Then the next one, look at 18 and 25. These are working against each other, so I'm going to have to subtract these. So I have to do 25 minus 18. Okay, and then when I figure out my answer right, you have to figure out, well, which direction is it going to move in? So here my answer is 7 newtons, right? Always write your unit. And then which one is going to win? Is the 18 going to win or the 25 going to win? Well, the 25 is going to win, right? Because it's stronger. So that's the direction that my box is going to move in. The next one, I have these that are working together. Okay, so I have to add them. I have to do 14 newtons plus 36 newtons. And this one, since they're both going in the same direction, right, it's going to move down. So here I have 50 newtons and down. Next, I have 25 and 8. Okay, so are you going to add these or subtract these? Well, they're working against each other, right? So I'm going to have to subtract those. And then the very bottom one, these are also working against each other, so I'm going to subtract these as well. And that's basically the gist of net force. You just have to determine, are they working together or are they working against each other? And then so you decide if you're going to add or subtract them, and then determine which way the box is going to move. I've got a few videos here for you that I showed you in class that are going to help you with your egg astronaut project. So keep in mind forces and things like that when you're building your project, because you definitely want your egg to survive the force of hitting the ground when it lands. Okay, remember, if you have any questions, come by and see me. Thanks for watching.